Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode number 40 of Creative Writers and Illustrators. And my guest for the day is Debasmita Dasgupta. And she's out with a new book. So let's start the session by listening to her words. Hi, Debasmita.
Hello, Shamala. Thank you always for being there and cheering for the stories that we create. And without any further ado, I'll just start with the reading, like you said. Okay. You want me to start from the departure, right? Yes. Okay. I'll read out. It's a long chase. The gray old beast is now tired, defeated. But it's still hungry. It has tasted the flavor of scarlet human blood. Now it wants more. Nobody can stop it. So it erupts an apocalyptic violence with another ferocious roar. It finds young, innocent human flesh and pierces its canines through it. He uses all his strength to fight it out, but the gray old beast crushes his head with its claws. He succumbs as blood wells up from his mouth, and the beast slowly eats his naked body. There is a quiet after the massacre. His half-eaten, abundant body lies on the street under the vacant sky, like a forgotten toy with open, dead eyes, turquoise blue eyes.
Yeah, thank you so much. Readers, what you just heard was from Terminal 3, a young adult novel published by Penguin Random House India. And this is written and illustrated by Debasmita Das. Reading this book was like ripping a band-aid from a raw wound. I had goosebumps when I read it. I think it was a very disturbing book for me. And at the same time, it also made me feel guilty because it made me realize how much we take our freedom for granted. Yeah, so let's start with the obvious question as to why did you write this book? There are so many ways of bringing out what's happening in Kashmir, but the viewpoint, this book is written from the viewpoint of a sports person who's injured at a certain point, and it's about her struggle to raise funds for her uh, tournament, which is upcoming tournament, and it's a whole lot of complex emotions. So I would just like to know why. This is inspired by Sabkat Malik's story.
No, actually, it's inspired by many sportswomen from Kashmir. So that's why, if you see in the beginning, I have actually mentioned that this book is dedicated to them. When I started, even thinking about writing this book, I was going through research and I came across so many incredible stories. And unfortunately, most of these stories are not discussed much. We don't know about these stories much. And the question that you asked me, Shamala, like why I wrote it, for the first time, the idea that I had in mind was to write something more hopeful about a place which is conflict driven most of the time. And this conflict, I have always felt that there is something like an inner conflict and an outer conflict, right? And I wanted to touch upon both areas, not just the outer conflict, but the inner conflict that one also goes through. And these inner conflict and outer conflict, these are circumstantial sometimes. They're also created by different emotions, different, people around you. Of course, things get much more aggravated when you're growing up in a conflict zone. But at the same time, there are some conflicts which are also created universally everywhere, So I wanted to actually find those commonalities because, see, I am not a Kashmiri. So whatever I am writing is going to be an outsider's point of view. But I have a lot of memories about Kashmir because as a child growing up, I used to visit Kashmir quite a lot. And I remember 1989 was the last year when I went there with my parents. And I still have very vivid memories of me going to Kashmir so many times. And then I have many friends and colleagues who are from Kashmir. And I have done a lot of, discussions with them as well, because when I was thinking of writing it, I wanted to do more justice to the story and at least, present a more holistic point of view. But what was the most important thing for me is to write something which end of the day gives hope and aspiration, because life goes on, and we often forget about the the usual emotions that everybody goes through, whether you're in a conflict zone or not. And we really need to touch upon those areas and see that how do we kind of support, or if you want to extend an arm, where to do that. Like you said in the beginning, that you felt a bit helpless, like how much less we know or what can we do. A lot of us have these questions. So I wanted to have those kind of, I mean, I'm nobody to give any answers, but at least to start the conversation from that point, that are there those touch points where we could start a conversation.
Absolutely. I think the book is very successful in making us ponder, just press the pause button on life and, think on so many issues.
Thanks.
The game you have chosen to represent this book is Jiu-Jitsu, which is it's not a popular sport. And I mean, I've heard about it, but I came to know more about it only when the founder of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, recently won medals. So that's why, I became aware more about this sport. So that was a very a unique choice. I mean, why did you choose that sport?
Yes. So I actually, when I was doing my research, I came across a lot of Kashmiri girls who are into martial arts. So different forms of martial arts, and also kickboxing, and like also other forms of sport as well, like cricket and basketball and football. So when I was looking at martial arts, then something interesting happened. So I at that time I used to live in Singapore, and I had a close colleague who was coming from, she was supposed to join us from the Philippines. And before she came in, we were told that she's a jiu-jitsu champion. And I looked up, oh, jiu-jitsu is like a, Brazilian jiu-jitsu is a martial arts. And I had this imagination that this will be a very strong built woman coming and joining my team. And then when she appeared, she was like a petite little girl, and very soft spoken. So I asked her that I was visualizing you in a very different way. Then she actually educated me. She told me a lot about jiu-jitsu and the whole idea that you can be very vulnerable, you can be very small, you can be very little, and yet you can fight back, because it's a mind game more than the body game. So that fascinated me. And I'm a Bengali, and there is a very famous line from one of Bengal's very famous poets, that "Khudro ami tuchho noi." The meaning is that I may be small, but I'm not insignificant. And when I was writing Terminal 3, these two ideas, that you can be small but you're not insignificant, and the comparison with it, with this whole form of jiu-jitsu telling that you can be petite but you can fight back a bigger enemy, it was very symbolic to me, and it took the form of this whole story, and Kwab being a jiu-jitsu champion.
Absolutely. Because when I started researching after I read the book, I realized that Sabkat Malik, she was the first jiu-jitsu champion from, and she's first, she's reached the Asia championships and the world championship.
Hmm, hmm,
I thought
hmm.
maybe the book was inspired by her. Your book also normalizes life. In sense, right on page 1, you talk about breastfeeding, and page 3, you talk about miscarriage. It's like issues, or not, I wouldn't say it's an issue, it's just like terminologies which people shy away from discussing. You have normalized them. So why was that important for you to bring that and write on page 1 and 3? The reader is like, okay, I'm open to more, let's see where this is kind of.
Well, I think the idea, like I said, I always felt like this has to be a more human story, a story that can easily connect, because the moment you say, when I was actually developing the story, the moment you say, oh, I'm writing a story about a conflict zone, or I'm writing a story about Kashmir, you only talk about or you think about the gray shades. You think about that it's going to be a very gloomy story, and it's going to be something that I will not identify with because I don't belong there, right? Whereas that was my main intent, to break that bias, that it's a story about people living there who are just like you and me. They have the same problems or the same aspirations, same dreams like you and me. So that connection was very, very important for me from page one, that it has to be something which you feel like, oh, she's just the next door person, or probably me. I have heard those conversations around me, and I could be Kwab, you could be Kwab. That was the whole idea, that she is not supposed to be somebody who is a distant dream. She is somebody who is my friend, my sister, and perhaps myself at points.
The last time I think I came close to, I don't even think the book, Faces in the Water by Ranjit Lal. So I think that kind of spoke about female feticide, and you know,
Yep.
I don't, I have not read. I mean, I read extensively. I have not come across words like breastfeeding and miscarriage in a YA book. So I think just bringing those words into the spotlight and telling people, look, it's okay to be using them in a YA book. This is
Yeah.
this is normal life. We should be having conversations, around them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And also, I mean, Shamala, you will agree with this, that this is, ultimately it's a story from coming from a woman, and it's also a story about a woman, or, multiple women. And there are some choices, and especially choices about your own body, and what discussions you need to have around your body is up to you. I mean, we should now really openly talk about these things and tell people who are telling us what to talk about. Like, this is high time, at least for people like us who at least have a voice to speak up, to just make it clear that this is my voice and I will say the things that I would like to say. And I don't want you to spoon feed me, or, put words in my mouth.
So, I also noticed that this book is written for an informed audience, because an audience which is familiar with the security, the barbed fences, the stone pelting, the blackouts, the drones, there is, you have taken the assumption that the audience knows about this. You're not bothered to explain why there is no pros, no cons, nothing. It's just like diving. Look, this is life in Kashmir.
Yep. Yes, yes, pretty much so, pretty much so. Because, when I was, once again, during my research time, and I'm going back to research more and more, because this book actually took me a few years to do a lot of research and talking to different people. And the people who have worked in Kashmir, or my Kashmiri friends who've grown up over there, for them, it's very normal. Like, I have a very close friend, and when I was talking to her, and she said, oh, we used to come back from school, and sometimes we'll just see, all these security suddenly, because there has been a tension maybe, and that's why there is more security around the house, and that's very normal. Or we are coming back, and then suddenly we will see a bus blowing up in front of us, and then, I'll have to call my mother, and she will arrange other transportation for me, so immediately we will be taken away. So these things, if you're there, it's not that always it's happening to you or you're actively a part of it, but it's like a river which is flowing alongside with you, it's there, continuously there with you. And you can't say that I don't want to be a part of it, because it's a part of your being over there. And that's why you said it very nicely, that I just put the reader into the story, and I do not have to explain, because first, it's also a YA story, and I would expect my readers to actually find out. I am not anybody to tell you or preach you about these things. This is not a historical account, and I've said it many times, I'm not a historian, I'm not a politician, I cannot actually comment on how these problems are made, and how these problems can be tackled. I'm just telling the story from a human point of view, that if I'm part of it, how am I dealing with it? How am I navigating in that space? That's the only thing that I can tell you as a storyteller. And if you're reading it, if you have any questions, you should go and look up. I do not have to tell you, I do not have to give you all the answers. This book is just a conversation starter, right? If you find it interesting, if you find some moments, if there are some questions coming to your mind, go and find out the answers. I think that is a responsibility. So yeah, I mean, I think that's what played in my mind when I was creating it.
You have used words, but you also used artwork in a very strong manner. For example, this artwork which appears on the page, and
Yeah.
this kind of disturbed me. There is not a drop of blood. There are no dead bodies, nothing. But it's just the play of light and colors. It kind of bears on you.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I have
Yeah.
seen your picture books, and I've seen pinks and green and very light and chirpy. And then there is this other side of Debasmita that I've never seen before. So there's a lot to say through the artwork.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that was also, playing in my mind because it's a graphic novel and
Mm,
it's a wide graphic novel. Of course, a lot of the story needs to be told visually
mm,
than through words. So the kind of visuals, the colors, in fact, what are the colors that I'm going to be choosing, and also different color palettes during different moments
mm,
to evoke certain emotion. I think I tried doing that earlier as well in my previous graphic novel. In Nadia, I tried doing that. But here it was even more important when I was talking about a certain incident happening in their lives. Yeah, I tried that, and if anybody has appreciated it, I really feel grateful for that.
The color palette kind of maintains the mood of the reader.
Mm, mm,
I think that you have brought out successfully. There is not, of course, this book is all about hope. It is a tangle of love and struggles and sacrifices and a whole lot of things. But this
mm.
thing of hope, kind of carries through, and it engages the reader right from the beginning till the end. There's
Thank
something happening on this page. There's so much is spoken through art, and I think as a reader, we may not be capturing a lot. So, this is a particular page with a transit. Could you just
Yes.
explain what's happening here?
Yeah, so this is actually when the transit starts. The transit actually starts with, I mean, I don't want to give out the story, but it starts with Cobb getting into a state of unconsciousness. And it's the dream state. And she's seeing certain things which she doesn't even know has happened. It's a reflection of that in a fragmented manner. And one again very interesting anecdote here is when I was doing my research and I was talking to people, a lot of people from Kashmir or who have worked in Kashmir, they mentioned to me a couple of times about the chinar trees and how like anything else, how the trees are also part of their livelihood and their lives in general. And I felt when, I mean, they, of course, they just told me in a very uh, usual way that the chinar trees have been there, and sometimes I miss the smell, the fragrance of the trees. People who have been living outside of Kashmir for a long time now. And to me, when I was listening to them, I felt like there is this presence of, I mean, I could really smell the chinar, and I could feel that those trees carry a lot of history in them. There's so much embedded inside those trees. And like we said, like the trees are much older than all of us, right? They have seen so much more than all of us. And they're witness to all these secrets and all these things that, are happening around them. So they are kind of there for ages, for centuries probably, and absorbing all these things and keeping them very secretly. So this was a symbolism of that, and that comes in her dreams as well, that how she thinks of certain things and how she was growing up, and some things she knew that certain things have gone wrong, but she was not fully aware of what was that. So it was also a kind of a hint of something coming in later, which will be revealed in the story. So that dreamscape, like a lot of times it happens, right? We see certain things in our subconscious mind during our dreams, which when it happens in reality, then you feel like, oh, I've seen this moment before.
Yeah.
Perhaps I've
Yeah.
experienced it,
Yeah.
right? So it's a kind of, yeah, it's a symbolism for that.
I like the words which Quab Mother says. She says, "We have more than no, we are more than our shadows inside us. One that has shrouded our souls. We are so used to our silences that we forget we have a voice." And I think you have kind of captured the essence of the present times with these words. Quab's mother is so strong. I mean, we don't come across strong characters like this.
Hmm. Hmm. I think, yeah, I mean, mothers, and especially Shaheen, Cobb's mother in this case, she's very much like my mother. And I've seen her being overprotective sometimes for unnecessary reasons, and I try to avoid her for that. And then suddenly she will do something or say something that will make me feel like, oh my God, she's so much more ahead of me. That's why she's my mother. And sometimes she feels like, oh, she's just a child and I have to control her. But then sometimes she will just surprise me with something really profound. So, yeah, I think Shaheen is pretty much like that. In the beginning, you just feel like, oh my God, she's a typical mother, always trying to protect the daughter. And then suddenly that switch happens. And I think women are very capable of that quality, right? And yeah, at least I have seen that many times around me. And that's what I experienced in Shine's character.
And Khadija says at one point, no matter where you go, the shadow will chase you. Words like this it really, I wouldn't say upsetting, but it kind of ruffles
Mm,
the soul.
mm, mm.
So what do you think is your objective of writing this book? Uh, what do you hope to achieve? Is it to use it as a conversation starter to sensitize people?
Uh, Not really. I mean, I can't really say that I just want to sensitize people or, preach people anything. I think the most important thing for me was this whole concept of, you know, getting disconnected. And I'm not saying only about Kashmir per se, in general. Sometimes we are so disconnected. And I feel even in this story, that's why it's a graphic novel, and it has all these characters which are tied with each other, but they're also very fragmented. And I think it might have, I mean, some readers might have also experienced it in certain ways that I experienced it when I was creating it, that this sense of connection and fragmentation, that sometimes you're connected and the next time you're disconnected. This was the idea that I wanted to bring up, that it exists in all of us. And yes, every book could be a conversation starter. But more than the conversations, I feel like, can we think about life in a different light? Look at certain things from a different perspective and try to see the other side of the stories sometimes. Like, for example, the moment we talk about Kashmir, we talk about conflict, we talk about all the turmoil that is happening over there, which is definitely, I mean, one should be talking about that. But at the same time, I have seen or I have heard a lot of interviews of sportswomen from Kashmir, and in general sports people talking about lack of resources. And that is not just in Kashmir, it happens everywhere. So sports is an expensive affair, right? And if you've seen in the book, I have also mentioned when Omar comes to their house and talks about the academy getting washed away by the rain. Those are practical problems. It happens. And if you really want to know more about those people and how they live, and isn't it normal that somebody growing up, a 16-year-old or 14-year-old, can't she aspire to be a cricketer or I don't know, tennis player? Why can't she imagine being that? Only because she's growing up in Kashmir, she can't think of anything else. So I wanted to talk about those aspects, like the hope, the dream, the aspiration, and if through that people can just read a lot more about the situation, or just know more about these people. Like, interestingly, somebody told me that when she was reading the book, after that she actually googled for Kashmiri sportswomen. I think that will be one of the biggest takeaways for me if people actually start looking for them and cheering for them, because there are fantastic people out there doing a lot of, great work for us. So yeah, that would be my idea behind this book.
I think this book has brought on a lot of complex emotions. It is not, and there are points in the book where you really pause and you take your time to absorb what you're trying to tell. And then there's the artwork with the color palette it's not a cheerful palette. It kind of puts you in a certain mood. So
Yeah.
how was your mood when you're writing it? Did you do it simultaneously when you're writing and illustrating? I mean, how did the book, was the story already in place? I mean, after you did the research?
Yeah. So I finished the manuscript first. And I did actually, to me, the character sketches happened first. Like, when I knew about the plot lines and the structure was almost there, I created, because I'm a visual storyteller. To me, when I see the characters, I could tell their stories better. So I drew Cobb. Definitely the character evolved, but that was the first thing that I did. And then I finished the entire manuscript. And after that, I went into storyboarding and illustrating the pages. So, yeah, it didn't happen simultaneously. The writing and illustrations didn't happen simultaneously. First, I wrote the story, and then I moved into the illustrations part. Only because it's also a much bigger book, so it's very word heavy. So that's why I needed to finish the script first to understand the length of the book as well, right? So yeah, that's how I did it.
How long did it take? I mean, most probably, I think a year or so. It's a long project, yeah?
Yes. So yeah, the technically, like, the creation part, only the craft part, I would say, like writing and then illustration. It took me 2 years, because 1 year was about writing, and writing took me a lot of research and all that. So that's why it was constantly changing. I was making edits and all. So it took me about a year to finish the entire manuscript, and then about another year to finish all the illustrations. So yeah, but in between there was also, it's not that I was constantly working on this, because I also needed to leave it aside for a while and then revisit. So but it took me 2 years to finish the full scope of the book.
That calls for patience. That's what artists do. So fab book, Devasmita. It's a really good book, and I really hope our viewers pick this book and read it. And before we
Thanks.
go, talk to us about your movie, which has come on Netflix.
Yes, yeah, I mean, the month of April was really exciting for me because I had Terminal 3, and I also had this film which got released. So it's called Before Life After Death. It's a story that I wrote, and then I co wrote the screenplay, and I also co produced the film. It happened during the COVID times. Actually, in 2020, we shot the entire film, and it was done in Singapore. At that time I was based over there, and we shot that entire film with local cast and crew members, of course. And the story is about sisterhood. It's about two Indian women living in Singapore, and that was a narrative which was kind of missing from Singapore storytelling. You see a lot of um, they're actually, I've lived there for almost 11 years, and I know that there's a lot of Hindi speaking people living in Singapore, but in the narrative, the Singapore narrative, those stories are missing. So in fact, that's why the film also got a premiere at the Singapore International Film Festival in
Wow.
2022, November 2022. And they also, acknowledge the fact that this was something missing in the narrative, and we're very proud to have this film over there. And it talked about this. I mean, the film also touches upon different areas of mental health and control over body, pregnancy and abortion, all these kind of topics. Yes, so it was a fascinating experience, and working with Netflix has been also great.
Thank you, Debasmita. All the best, and I think packed work with this book. And I hope you continue to create many new narratives to make the world a better place. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, Shamala. It's always a pleasure talking to you.